Summer videos. Not going to be as many this year because we've been busy hiring 10 new staff members and getting ready for year two. But I did want to make a couple of them just related to things that I didn't know a lot about going into last year. And then things that we're going to be working on this year. So the first one I want to talk about is standards for success, what we use for our evaluation tool. I hadn't had training on it before the start of last year, so didn't really understand how to use it. And I want to make sure that I'm explaining it as best as I can now. And feel free if you have questions. I know people have been really good about asking questions about it, about the evaluation, about the observations. And I'm going to do my best to explain the process that I went through last year, but certainly it's always like everything, a work in progress. So let's start by taking a look just at the general setup. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually have a video in there that everyone can watch, and I'll have the scripting for that video done, and we can look at then how I score it. So it'll be a little bit longer. You don't have to watch all of it if you're comfortable with the process. This isn't one of those that is a requirement. It's just there as a resource, maybe for people who are new to the process or for people who might have questions. So we're going to start out just by looking in general at the web page. So this is our dashboard, and there's two different dashboards, and I'll go to the evaluation here in just a minute. But we start out most of the year on the observation dashboard. So we're going to go to the sandbox here and take a look at the different elements of it. And you'll see that I have a couple of shorts that I've opened up. So I'm going to focus on this one because this is the one that I had the scripting done in. And you can see that I try to script out all of the items in there, and then I'll go back and score based on the rubric. So we're going to go in and take a look then about how I would score this observation. Just a couple of the elements. Then I'm going to switch to the video so we watch it, and we'll go back to the scripting and show how the scoring's done. So the first part here, and this is what Standards for Success suggested to me, is that I switch these from a final marking it once, which would give the score for that area as 3, effective. So what I've done is taken that off and switched it to preliminary marks. So if you're on the formal one, that gives it an overall score in the evaluation as a 3. This allows me to go in and provide preliminary marks and then give an evaluative score at the end of the year based on the various things. So I can factor in improvement and other things. If I have the final mark on each observation, you have to do many more observations to change the score. Whereas if I see the growth throughout the year, or if you get kind of the cumulative number of effective and highly effective, I'm able to then mark that score. So I'll change that to preliminary. And then I usually, when I'm doing the classroom observations, I'm in domain 2. So I'm focused on domain 2, which is effective instruction. And that's 75% of your score. So this is the primary area that you're getting your score. Let's take a look at the video for that I'm going to use to script out, and then we'll look at some of the scoring.
The next word, drumroll please. Listen to the sentence. I promised not to hang by my feet. Stella Luna sighed. Stella Luna sighed. Stella Luna sighed. Say sighed. 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 Do the hand motions with us. Say sighed. Sighed. Sighed means? Sighed means? Let out a long, loud breath. Let out a long, loud breath. Say it again. Let out a long, loud breath. side mean?
Who can read the word of the day? This one's a little bit tricky. If it tricks you, that's okay. I'll give you some clues to help you out. Chastity, go ahead. Everybody tracking the page. You don't need to track chastity right now because you have it right in front of you.
Scarce.
Beautiful. Everybody, the word is scarce. What word?
Scarce.
Good. Chastity, please read that word for us.
Not enough of something.
Not enough of something. So let me give you one example, and then you can give me all of the brilliant examples that you have. Hands down, let me give you one example. There are 24, 25 of you. If I had some pencils, and every single one of you needed one of those pencils, tracking up here. Every single one of you needed those pencils, but I only had 12, then my pencils would be scarce. Or the amount of pencils that I had would be scarce because I don't have enough pencils for all of you that need a pencil. What is something else that is scarce? And some of you might be thinking about history class like DeAndre already said, which is such a brilliant connection.
Real quick of some excellent teaching related to vocabulary. And you can see then in the scripting over here, and I'm going to make it full size to take a look at the scripting at first. You'll see I've got what as close to what I can the teacher's saying. So the next word, drum roll, please. Then I'm saying, then noting some of the things that relate to the rubric, so all the students comply with the action. So when we get to the rubric, and we'll look at that in just a second, you'll see how I'm able to pair those things with what the students are doing. And then again, I'm noting the teacher uses auditory and visual signal for students to stop. I note all the students stop. I note that the teacher uses inflection when teaching and emphasizes the key words. And again, after a year of doing this, I know the way it matches up with the rubric a little bit more. So I'm teeing that up for myself. Again, in a check for understanding, I've got call and response with a visual cue. And then I'm noting that all or almost all the students choral respond. And then sometimes it's just a continuation of that. And then again, noting here the circling back. And if you go into the second clip, I note almost all the hands are raised in the air. So again, this is a different type of check for understanding, but not saying what's best or not. It's just what's happening in that moment. They call on one person, everyone tracking on the page. So I liked how she gave the students, even the students who then weren't able to respond, had something that they were supposed to do. So that would be something that I would note there. And then has them choral respond to that. So again, kind of emphasizing that in different ways. I like to hear the relationship building that she's doing. She calls out their brilliant examples. So she's building that rapport with the student, and then specifically calls out a student later about the brilliant connection he made. So if I'm going in here to look at the different domains, I might start out with the demonstrating the content knowledge and factually correct, clear and concise. Right here we've got she's going back to it a bunch of times, so that seems like it fits the restate and rephrases several times. If you go into here, I even use the word emphasizes. So I'm scoring that with emphasizes. I'm probably going in again to the check for understanding because that seems very appropriate. Almost all key moments. She is not allowing those students to opt out. They're all kind of looking for all the students to go through that. Now, some of the areas that I didn't see here, so you may not get a score initially, is I might not have seen a scaffold, specific techniques or a chance to make adjustments because this was just a short observation. And we can always go back and take a look at those in another observation. So if your score isn't where you like in a certain domain, I can come in and look at just that domain. So let's say you really want to look at, modifying instruction. That may be an opportunity where I come in and watch you teach with a small group during the latter part of the reading block, whereas I came into the first part initially to look at some of that whole group instruction, some of that some of those checks for understanding. And then again, I mentioned on this student, you have the the interventions with their tracking up here. So I really liked how she calls out the student where they have a chance to push them forward, but don't necessarily, just builds that rapport. The consequences are very, very quick and concise, and then they move on. And you'll see here the dog's barking. You can tell it's still summer, so hopefully everybody's enjoying. Hopefully this gives just a little bit of clarity about the observation part of it. I did want to show too the evaluation overview. So when I go back into the sandbox for the finalization, and actually I'll go back here again to the finalization, they'll have a chance to look at that. And this is how it's calculated. So I go in here to calculate, and I'll see all the marks that I've done. So and it'll give me a little number here, 3. And so that makes this one look like a 3. So what I'm looking at for a 4, let's say we're in 2.2, and I see mostly 3s and maybe some 4s in here, or all of the 3s are filled up with just a bunch of them. And I felt like that pushed it over. That gives me the chance to score that as a 4. Whereas if I had finalized that in observation, again, that's the score for that time. And you'd have to actually that in a separate observation. This, I can have almost all 3s and maybe a couple 4s and score that as a 4, because I feel like overall that teacher's demonstrating highly effective instruction, while most of the small ticks that I could see in that moment are effective, because I saw some highly effective, and all the effective, it pushed it over the edge to a highly effective. Hopefully that gives you some idea going into the school year. Again, keep asking questions. I felt like teachers had brilliant questions about this, and it was something that was a learning process for me last year. I didn't get trained till after the school year started, and got just a brief overview of how to use the system. I'm sure that I'll be learning more about it this year, but I learn a lot through questions too. So if you all have them, fire away.